first and foremost, media flight plan within exercise 5 takes a look at cost per thousand and cost per point. So if you weren't clear on this, let's go over this real quick. And so first and foremost, they ask your cost per thousand and cost per point, and they want you to calculate CPM. So if you've ever done this before, CPM is real easy in terms of you have your total cost over total impressions times 1,000, because remember, CPM is based on thousands, not millions. And I've got my handy dandy Excel spreadsheet here. And so again, based on this, we do an easy formula in saying that we have our cost over the impressions. And normally I would multiply this by 1,000, but on the women audiences here, it already has the zeros incorporated. So I'm not going to multiply it by 1,000. If you were, you can see it over here that you can utilize the 1,000s. I typically just make it very simple for me in terms of, oh, I didn't do that right. It's supposed to be divided. So there we go. That looks much better. So easy way to do that, if you haven't worked with this before, is you can just type in 1,000. Wait till you get to the black plus sign and then drag down. And I'm actually going to drag it down on the totals because that will come in handy for a problem later. So again, just as easy as this formula right here is your cost divided by your impressions. And again, you would multiply it by 1,000 if you had all the impressions written out in its entirety. So you get this number of, I'm sorry, going a little bit all over the place on my computer here. Your CPM of 13.65. I would round this up. And so, let me zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. And so, what you could do is, since this is a horizontal problem, you can scroll down again and just have all the answers. I typically like to do this. One, it gets you in the practice of using Excel for your media plans. And the other thing it does that I really enjoy is it, in the long run, can make the problem much easier so you don't have to do a lot of math. So I get the totals here pretty easily. So that's one. Let's look at cost and impressions. I'm going to take all this down for now. Pardon my raucous noise with my keyboard here. So total cost in this case is your color full page times your insertations. So this is all part of number one. Number one's kind of a long problem. So very easy. So you'll see that this corresponds with the $377,295. And again, use my black plus sign, scroll down, and I've got all my total cost. That's going to be the data that's represented here. So again, this is just cost times insertation is total cost. Think of this as like a gross problem. And gross impressions come up in this case because, again, you have your impressions here, and it's the same formula. So whereas with total cost, you do cost times insertations equals total cost. For gross impressions, you have your universe in terms of your impressions, your total cost, or excuse me, your impressions times your insertations equals your total gross impressions. And again, this is just as easy as doing the audience, provided I do that correctly, and I didn't. There we go. That looks better. And scroll down on that, and you'll see again that corresponds with the correct answer throughout. So again, Excel makes this just significantly easier. So what about totals? Now totals are going to be a little bit different because Normally you would say that I'm just going to add everything up. And for the most part, you'd be right. For cost, total cost and impressions, that is what we're going to do. So we'll do equals sum. So this is our addition formula. And I'll do that real quick. And that is going to be our sum for total cost. Do it again for gross impressions. And there we go. Now you'll notice, let's just do this real quick. I'm doing it wrong on purpose. If you do the CPM here, it'll come out at 103. And that's going to clearly be wrong in this case in terms of cost per thousand here. And you'll see that this was a mistake that a few people made that I couldn't help but notice. But what you get is I had 103 and this says 11.99. So obviously that's incorrect. What you do in this case is we're calculating again from cost and impressions from CPM here. So we start to look at total cost and impressions as totals. So again, in this case, we'll take equals cost divided by impressions, which is exactly what we did, but these are just the totals. And we have 11.9, and it would be 8.5, but we'll round up to 11.99. So that, in a sense, is what we have overall in terms of filling out the spreadsheet here. So again, like I said, if you want to write this out, this makes it much easier in putting things into perspective here. So where do we go next? So like I said, number one was a very long problem. It had, 4 parts to it. So let's get into some of the easy stuff. Now that we've done all the legwork, we can go into our question. So which magazine in Exhibit 1 is most efficient and has the lowest CPM? Well, that's easy. We know that Prevention magazine at 1.35 is going to be our lowest cost per thousand. So that's going to be a good deal to be able to take in terms of how much it costs versus the audience that's looking at it. And you can see the problem that's listed here. That makes it a little bit easier. So that's question 2. Like I said, gets easier once you fill everything in. The next one is which has the highest, so least efficient. And we know Time Magazine. We know that it costs a lot. It actually has, it has more than Prevention. But at the same time, it's, if you were to look at, let's say, Parents Magazine, or actually, you know what, Women's Day here has a much larger audience and costs significantly less at 11.09. We'll say 11.1. So Time Magazine, on the other hand, does not have the same universe that we're looking for, but costs significantly more. So it's got a pretty bad CPM in this case. So 20.2 at 23 is not something we would probably be aiming for. So again, this is bang for the buck kind of problems here. So let's look at number 4. So number 4, they basically say, let's say the universe for women is 106,894. What is the rating for Red Book and Women's Day? And it says to show your math. And so they have the formula here. Again, pretty easy, where they say, I'm going to pull up my Excel here. We've got the Red Book at 8,537, and then again, this is in thousands, divided by the universe that's listed here, times 100, and we get our ratings at 8 versus Women's Day at 18.1. So that makes it pretty easy in terms of calculating that, and preferably Women's Day in this case will have the best ratings in this case. So although looking at it, Red Book would have, actually, if you look at Women's Day is probably one of the best bang for your buck in this case in terms of the audience and full page color ad. Now, it doesn't hold a candle to Prevention, but again, our ratings at 18.1. That's pretty good that we're looking at here. So the next one actually has to do with another sheet we're dealing with here. And you'll notice that I've filled everything in for now. I'm going to just delete that real quick. I think a lot of people, first and foremost, when they were looking at this, got really confused with the HH rating and the listing of GURPS. In this case, we're not looking... The HH rating kind of refers to us as our GURPS right now. But we also do the HH rating with our scheduled insertations here. So calculating this again, let's look at how we do this. And again, this is one of those long-winded problems again. So they basically say, first and foremost, fill all the missing values. We know that in this case we have cost over GURPS. Oops. Costs. Nope, wrong one. There we go. Over. This is not being my friend today. There we go. Just holding the shift key down. So we see here, and that's your CPP. Scroll down, easy enough again. You'll see that corresponds with everything we're dealing with here. It can be a little messy on Excel, but overall, if you just kind of pay attention to what you're doing on here, you can round in your hundredths place pretty easily. So we know that. We also know our cost, which is just going to be... Gosh, I could not click the right one to save my life today. It's just going to be cost times insertations, drag down, and then GURPS, overall GURPS, so it is my ratings, times my insertations, 16.9. So you'll see again, everything corresponds the way I want it to, so that looks pretty good. Let me zoom in again. Apologies. There we go. That looks a little better. So we got our GURPS, we've got our total cost, and we got our CPP. I know they're going to want the totals, and I'm right. So again, let's do what we have been doing in terms of total cost is sum. All these little numbers right here. Same thing with GURPS. Sum. All these little numbers right here. We get 81.2 and 1.3. Yeah, we'll say 1.3 million in terms of total cost. And again, just easy enough in terms of calculating for CPP is going to be your total cost divided by your GURPS. So, total cost. I'm down shift again. I don't know what's my problem here. There we go. So, this corresponds to the correct number at 16,000. And again, you would round that up in terms of to the nearest dollar, just to make the math a little easier on yourself. And again, did the legwork here. So, they ask next is what is the CPP, cost per point for Survivor. Well, we already know that. And so what does that mean? So it is amount required to purchase a single rating point for a particular audience. And remember, this is based on a particular universe that we're looking for. And so again, we do a lot of numerical comparisons here to get to this figure. Next, it says TV program Nielsen estimates that total TV homes for the season in question is 109.6 million. How many impressions are produced by one ad? Again, we have this number for 2020 because that's what they're looking for. GURPS over 100 times your universe equals impressions. We have our 6.2 as referenced over here. And all we have to do is divide by 100, multiply it by the proposed universe, which is right here, and we get 6.8 million. And then they do the next question, which is very similar, and saying, what if it's, okay, we had 6.2 GERTs. What if it was just 1? And so in this case, it'd just be 1 over 100 times your universe in this case, and you get your gross impressions. So that's actually going to be the majority of the legwork we're going to do in terms of our work in media flight plan. The rest of it's actually pretty easy to determine, and I hope I labeled this well enough. I'm going to exit out of these two and bring up 2 more. So the next one we're looking at is syndicated consumer research. You'll probably see stuff like this if, let's say, hypothetically, you were to have access to Nielsen ratings. Or you might have this in other major media data programs. I don't know why it took me so long to say that. But they kind of demonstrate what you're looking for. And they'll usually compile it into this huge data. One of the most recent ones I received was a PDF that could convert to Excel, but it was 4,000 pages long. And so much of this is going to be using sort functions on Excel, as well as some other methods. But the biggest thing to think about when you're doing stuff like this is making it as easy to read as possible, because a lot of what you're going to find here in exercise 6 is actually way simpler than it looks. So you may have gotten this data sheet. So if you were on your online program and media flight plan in ground school, I think that's what it was, you get this big collection of data that you might sit here and say, I really don't know what the hell I'm looking at. Which is fine. And this is why I want to go over it with you. I've highlighted some of the things from the questions, so if you're just curious about that, that's kind of how I do things. And let's make this a little bit bigger, shall we? Okay, so first thing, their biggest promotion that they want to promote or talk about in Media Flight Plan Exercise 6 is based on the ideology of how to read this stuff. And so how to read a major syndicate of data. And so the first question they ask is syndicated consumer research. They want to know how many people attended movies in the last 6 months, which is just promoted right here. You have your unweighed, but you want to look at your projected audience in this case. And again, it's just as easy as finding it. In which case you would multiply it by 1,000 by what you see here. Anytime you see this number, you multiply by 1,000 eventually. So those numbers can be a little deceiving, and I've seen this in multiple data spreadsheets that they, again, try to simplify it by putting these 3 zeros and putting 1,000. So again, just be wary of that. It is the weight, it is the projected, that's the one you're looking for. So simple enough. That's just a quick thing of looking for it. But then they also say projections in this crosstab, referencing in question 1, are displayed in a common numerical way, and they're shown in thousands. So again, that's all that's saying. You could work with it in Excel if you would like. It's usually not worth it. If you're really interested in it and you want to get the final product, that's something you would promote at the very end of what you would be displaying to a client, to consumers, to an ad agency, that kind of thing. Okay, so this is where it gets a hair complicated, but it's not too bad. So let's look at the syndicated research, and it says among all the adults who graduated high school, they said what percent prefer to see a movie on opening weekend. So they give you a list of instructions to do. An easy way to do this: go to graduating in high school and look at our totals and look at the people who want to observe this on opening weekend here. So they're looking at a couple things here. They want to know if this is a horizontal or vertical problem. They want to know the math of the percentage regarding the people who see a movie on opening weekend divided by those totals, and that's where you would look at the horizontal percentage. So I already kind of gave you the answer. So they asked, first and foremost, is this a horizontal or vertical problem? And it's clear, just based on that it's a cross. It is a horizontal problem because you take this number right here and you would divide it and you would reach 7.7. And this is the nice thing of a lot of these databases, that they'll actually kind of lay that out for you. It's just knowing how to read it. That's all that it is. And you'll see in the confirmation it's 7.7. That's the math that it takes to get there. So when they say show your math, all it is this 5,158 divided by your total high school grads. And it equals 7.7. So horizontal problem. The next problem they're looking at, so I'm going to do a little trick for those who don't play in Excel as much as I do. That's fine if you don't. You'll notice that we're looking for attending movies once a month. So this is our column we're paying attention to right now. And I've got my totals here. So that it's kind of a two-part question if you look at it carefully enough. So it says rank the markets 1 to 7. And they'll give you the number, but if you want to do the math, you would look at your projected, weighed number that we're promoting here for each one of these. So again, all this is doing is looking through them. And you'll see, here's your number, here's your total audience, times 100 equals your percentage. But there's an easy way to do this in Excel. And again, here's your column that you'll be using here. And I use a view function and freeze your panes. I want to unfreeze them real quick and show you what happens. So let's say I don't have the horizontal or vertical. I did it again. Horizontal and vertical percentage. I do not know why I can't say that. Let's say you don't have that. And a lot of different databases don't have that. That's kind of a luxury in this case. Let's say I've got this number and I want to be able to figure out this percentage. And so I scroll all the way down till I have these numbers. So your 4884, 2396, 3868, etc., etc. But again, you don't have this vertical column. So it would be a pain to say, okay, here's my number, here's my audience. Scroll back down. Apologies if you're getting sick of watching this. Here's my number, go back up and divide. There's an easier way to do this. And it starts by highlighting this information right here and going up to View. So this tab up here, I'm using a Mac, but you can still use this for a PC, View, and then freeze your pane. So I'm telling Excel, if it wants to work right, which it didn't this time, oh, Excel, why aren't you working with me? Let's try this. By the way. Well, doesn't seem to want to work with me right now. Usually you would just highlight this. And, oh, there we go. It finally decided to work with me. All right. So again, you just highlight this and click Freeze Panes. Again, I don't know why that didn't work the first time. So this way, I can just go down, scroll down to where I want to be. Eventually, there we go. And you would divide 4.884 with this number right here in your totals. Yep, 484 divided by your totals. And this is where you can get that ranked order of the ratings here. So the Pacific is the highest here. And you'll actually notice that all that information is just conveniently put right here as well. And this gets to the question, is it a horizontal or vertical problem? Again, we are promoting in columns, so it is a vertical problem. Therefore, we could just look at the vertical percentage and we have our answer. So again, pretty simple to be able to do in this case. So again, this is not too bad. Let's look at all adults with children 6 to 11 years. What percentage prefer to see a movie on opening weekend? Is this horizontal or vertical? And this is all about reading. Where are we? There we go. 6 to 11 years, first and foremost. We've got all this information right here sitting pretty. And in this case, we would look at your totals, as well as prefer to see a movie on an opening weekend. So you've got these two numbers that we're promoting here. It's just basically saying a sample within a population. And because this is a horizontal problem, we get to our percentage, horizontal percentage of 10. However, they may ask, what about the overall totals within? So this was just based on totals in general within this population. What if they're talking about, of this particular group right here, prefer to see a movie on an opening weekend? That would be the next question, which is just as simple as the first one. Divide this by this, and you get your 23.1. So once again, all this is just trying to read this. Next one is just a hair more complicated. It's not too bad. They're asking for the set of working women among the three groups listed below, which has the highest percentage of a movie that are working women. You want to look at part of TV goers. So the math is a little complicated here, but again, make this a little simple here. We have the main universe we're talking about here. We have our numbers based on this, and unfortunately this was connected with the previous problem, but here divided by here gives you our percentage, and it is a vertical problem. So these are the numbers you're looking at. So 32, 38, and 35. 32, 38, 35. It's all promoted right here. So make sure you're looking at those right columns. If you're looking at the thousands here, projected thousands, you're going to get what you want out of this. Again, they're all vertical problems. So through this solution is within the first 2 weeks has the highest percentage. That's the one we're looking for. Okay, I know I'm running a little over on time, but let's look at the last question. So the last question is a little tricky, and this actually screwed a lot of people up in this case. We are looking for men in regards to, look at the question real quick so I don't get it wrong. Of the men who attended movies in the past 6 months, which percentage prefer to see a movie on opening weekend? So this is a bit confusing because they actually provide the right answer as a horizontal problem at 9% that you'll see here as well as here. Both these are wrong for this particular question. And this is the problem that you have with data sets like these, is they don't always provide the information, so you have to do a little bit of math yourself. But thankfully, it's not hard math, because we look at it and they said this is a brain teaser. I don't know why they call it a brain teaser. It's not a brain teaser. But basically what they're trying to say is that we are looking at the horizontal percentage is at the intersection of men, of the overall, and the prefer to see a movie. We're looking at within. So we're looking within these numbers here. So it's a simple, take this number, divide it by the 6 months, not the total, because the total would be right. But in this case, this number divided by this number times 100 equals 15%, which is not listed here. That's important to think about, again, if you don't have this data. So the answer would be 15% of within this 6 months here. So I went through that whole spiel of going through exercises 5 and 6. I hope you understand it a little bit better. I hope it's more clear. If it's not, please email me, and I will be more than happy to work on that with you. Do remember your projects that are going to be due Thursday and Friday. Thursday will be a little rigorous in terms of the expectations for media flight plan. The other one will not be nearly as rigorous. You just need to talk to whoever you need to be talking to within your client, especially if it's small. Otherwise, if it's a major one, and if you're curious and saying, I'm not sure if this is major or not, what if you already has, and I appreciate that, I would just say, like, if you're doing Starbucks, they would probably ask for a lot more for their advertising, but for just all intents and purposes, let's do $10 million if you're doing a much larger company. Otherwise, email me with the budget, proposed budget by your client, or if they don't provide it, we'll work with something else. Okay? So that's it from me. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.